Dark ecstasy is the spirituality of the Illuminati and a force that has, to a degree, been implanted into humans, where humans have a capacity to develop spiritual euphoria surrounding artistic experiences of genuine sadomasochism, death, murder, war, and pain. Dark ecstasy, spiritual euphoria becomes addictive and is triggered by art forms in the world. It is the opposite of the experience that someone has of joy of nature, such as the ocean surf. In a nutshell, what that is, this is heavily related to the mysterious nature of God in a disturbed world. There is some kind of force or something that humans either are infected with or have the ability to apprehend, which is very, very dark. I mean, serial killers have reported that in their crazy rituals of dissecting bodies and so forth, all of a sudden, for some reason, there's this total physiological euphoria and ecstasy in them. Why would that be the case? Now, here, let me tell you very quickly why I know about this. I fell into this, and a lot of people I found out have when I started writing about this and doing, YouTube broadcasts, and I found out lots of people know exactly what I'm talking about. And the only way you can know what I'm talking about here is if you have a taste of it. Basically, it seems like incredible amounts of people have. It's just a sort of idea that all these things that should not be joyful, like suicide, abortion, riots, acts of pain, hurting animals, acts of complete non-empathy, and so forth, these will develop a strange, ecstatic joy within a person. Okay, now, and that strange that's there, especially if we're in an intelligently designed cosmos with an all-loving God. So it almost implies something else has tainted us at some point. For the same reason that half of the front part of our brain seems to be shut off in various ways and inactive, that seems like somebody or something tampered with us. So this is another way to look at it. Why would intelligently designed beings have this darkness of them? Now, the real point about dark ecstasy, this is just what I started calling it, dark ecstasy, that I fell into this back in my Buddhist days for a number of reasons, and that's how I discovered this exists. But when you discover it exists, you see that the whole world seems to be operating according to this. Now, why would a movie like Sin City, there's a serial killer in the film who discusses that the serial killing, the act of it, reduces a white light and makes the serial killer feel the power of God. Now, I don't know what God is talking about, but the point is they're talking about exactly, in one of the most popular movies made recently, exactly to nitty-gritty details of what this thing, dark ecstasy, is. Now, lots of movies, Shutter Island talks about this, the Resident Evil film, Silence of the Lambs, Edgeborn Killers, and so forth. Then you find other things like Hurricane Katrina. When you're in the dark ecstasy mode, when I hope people don't go there, but when you're in it, you can sort of see that it's an art form. Something in the world will happen. There will be a piece of art, whether it's a riot or a war or a nuclear bomb or a piece of a film or a piece of Picasso's art or something, and it will trigger in your consciousness a sort of euphoria. Now, this is discussed in Zen Buddhism, not in the dark, but in light ecstasy sense. Zen Buddhists will say, you can be doing your meditation and go out for a walk, and all of a sudden, bam, the most beautiful song of a bird you hear suddenly from the tree above you, and it just pushes you over the edge into spiritual enlightenment. So there's this idea out there that the environment can create ecstasy. Now, in the Buddhist sense there, it's in the environment of nature and beautiful things that can do that. But there's a dark aspect of this too, where sadomasochistic murderous art can trigger someone into the dark ecstasy that, again, is mysterious that it exists. Now, when you start to recognize these forms of dark ecstasy, you find out that the whole world seems to, video games. The best example is war. These things feed a spiritual frenzy, a dark spiritual, artistic, sadomasochistic frenzy. How could this be the case? Why would the whole world, for strange reasons, be steered in this way? Is there's a dark force behind it, doing it? Dark magicians. This is their religion. They must be using the whole world to do this. The secret underground prisons of torture and so forth, like in the movie, crazy torture movie about the person in the secret prison in Europe. Hurricane Katrina is such a perfect example. I mean, all the riot and the frenzy. David Lynch, the filmmaker, Wild at Heart, Lost Highway, and so forth. I think he's like an amateur dark ecstatic. Jim Morrison would try to create riots because it was an art form for him. He would read literature by Hitler and social control and so forth and try to figure out how to make his concerts turn into riots because that was what's beautiful to him, flirting with dark ecstasy. So if you want to understand how the world works, this is it. Why is the world so, there's the aspect of how can a God-created universe allow this? That's one issue, but putting that aside for a second, this seems to be the best theory. when you're in that dark ecstasy state, it's almost like you could feel a dark force all around. And I mean literally dark, like a black cloud of black fog. Some people listening might be familiar with Norwegian black metal, heavy metal music, and a lot of the people into that were really into what we were describing as dark ecstasy a little while ago. And they would describe, you know, a shadowy horned figure dancing around in the dark fog, you know, a playful god. And then these people were obsessed with suicide. You know, some of the band members committed suicide. They burned churches. These were real dark ecstatics. So running into dark ecstasy myself made me see that it's a real force working in the world. And so I don't think it's an idea set. A lot of people, I think, just think it's an idea set. And, you know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's true, but from what I've seen, it's something that really sort of enveloped our world. I can't remember if it was Jim Keith. There's somebody who wrote their book. A lot of old Freemasons would call the planet Earth, you know, the dark planets. Because here's my interpretation of that. We live in a playful cosmos. And we live in a pretty amazing place, but then there's this dark planet here. You know, Alex Jones calls it a prison planet, almost like that's what it really is. God created ecstatic cosmos, then there's this dark place here. And a lot of people talk about the Nephilim existing, and I made a film about that. Maybe there are these beings here, like my emotion, my feeling goes beyond my body. And they can touch you. You know, there's experiments in telepathy. Maybe what they have is a dark feeling state, dark feeling set that is infecting this planet. Perhaps, you know, the force comes from consciousness and these beings are here. You know, it says in Genesis 6:4 or something, you know, they are in the earth. And, you know, there's a lot of dark things going on. So perhaps, you know, we have some evidence for this dark force. Take a look at your inner consciousness. You find some amazing things. So we talk about feeling. Now, let's talk about your thoughts. Another aspect of your inner consciousness is, you know, we all have this thought talk going on inside of us, this language. We're talking to ourselves all the time. If you just stop for a moment and look within yourself, you can see that going on. Your thought processing. It's just amazing how much of that is self-defeating. I mean, you're telling yourself constantly, I can't do this. But where does this all come from? It's almost like we have inborn in us this defeatism or something. And I've theorized for a long time, if there are these dark beings around, like the Nephilim, some dark extraterrestrials or something that say the Earth is hollow and some of them are down there or something, I've theorized for a while that they can't do telementation. Because telementation, it would appear, is an act of ecstasy, is happiness. So when you start doing it, you want to do it more and more and more. Now, if on the other hand you're practicing dark ecstasy and you fall into a non-human way of living, then it should be the case that you can't do it because you're not following God or the intelligence that exists that creates everything. And therefore you're not following your own innate way of existing. So you can't do telementation from that standpoint. So yeah, dark ecstasy, evil, thinking of yourself as a failure, thinking of yourself in defeatist terms. I can't do this, I can't have that. All these things prevent us from being what we are, which is our telementers. I think that we've been in a one-world government for thousands of years. There's like a metamorphosis that they're pre-planning. Now, this has happened before. The French Revolution is an example. World War II is a really good example where we were in a one-world system, and then they changed it. What they did is basically introduced Hitler, told everybody who he was, and the whole world attacked, and then they used the chaos to create new kinds of order. You know, they built the Pentagon up, the United Nations out of that, the CIA. So many, you know, Truman's Mental Health Act, so many things that define civilization now came out of that order, out of chaos. Tweaking things. Why? Why would they do this? Well, I think the answer is the dark ecstasy we were talking about. You know, think about 9/11. A lot of people say they needed 9/11. If 9/11 is fake, as I think, and probably most of your listeners do, they needed it to have a fabricated war in Iraq. And I say no, not true, because they invaded Iraq in the early 1990s, and they didn't need any false flag terror event. They just said, we're going to do it, and said, we're going to do it, and they did. And so they didn't need 9/11. So what is the explanation for 9/11 then? Well, dark ecstasy. What's the explanation for the war? People will say, oh, they wanted oil. That I don't know about that. It seems like there's oil all over British Columbia, Brazil, oceans, Gulf of Mexico, and so forth. Did they really need the oil? Doesn't look like it. If they didn't, then why was there the war? The explanation, again, would be given in the theory of dark ecstasy. And so all these other descriptions are just an illusion. The real cause of the problems in our life is corporatism. You know, we're in civilization, we're not in our natural element. Well, the reason that civilization is harmful for our natural mental state is because the texture of corporatism we have in the world today, which is really against human psychology. Now, corporatism creates our human psychology. I think the devil exists as a being, and that's because dark ecstasy, I don't call it Satan or anything. I think that word's overused and people become used to it. I call it the horned god. The Illuminati seems to be obsessed with horned creatures, owls and bulls and goats and stuff. Go back to the Norwegian black metal I was talking about earlier. They were always talking about a dancing horned god. And when I went through my dark ecstasy days, which is a whole other topic, but the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when he was implanted in that movie with an image from the UFO. For half the movie, he was trying to get it down in the artwork. His ego consciousness or something was preventing him from seeing the image deep within. It's almost like that happened to me I became obsessed with horned creatures in this crazy time of my dark ecstasy days back in the 1990s. And it seems almost like that's what the Illuminati is. They have, statues around and dragon statues, and they're obsessed with the owl and a Ford Ram truck or Dodge Ram or whatever it is. I mean, this horned creature idea is all over. It's almost like, it really is a real thing that we're describing here. There is a horned god that is behind all this dark ecstasy on this prison planet, and it's empirical that the world is shrouded in darkness. How can these two things coexist? It has to be the case, if you got God of love, that this intelligence does have a plan. Our job is to find out what it is and get to a better place than this sort of dark world we live in. We're supposed to be creatures of joy. If anybody doesn't understand that right now, you are missing that humans are meant for ecstasy. Well, your physiology, what is a sexual orgasm? Is ecstasy. You put on Pachelbel's Canon later today, and you'll be filled with joy. DMT comes into your brain every night through the pineal gland. It goes into the fetus in the womb at 49 days, or as Professor Strassman has showed. I mean, we are made for ecstasy. We're made for meditation. We're made for joy. If you think that your life is not joy, you are a victim of corporatism, the plague of civilization. You just simply need to reorient your perspective, and the events of your life will follow.